You're listening to Virginia Trioli on ABC Radio Melbourne.
Let's take a closer look at what's happening in one of those key seats where the independents, the higher profile or the less high profile independents, believe they might have a chance. And as you know, the voices of movement and those voices of endorsed candidates really believe in some Victorian seats they're in with a chance. Well, one of them is the seat of Flinders, but that's where it's got a little bit complicated. You might remember there's a couple of reasonably high profile independent candidates that were to stand there. One is the formerly endorsed voices of candidate. The other is Despi O'Connor. And she, of course, formerly having had a role on the local council there. Except there's been a little bit of a problem. She's come a cropper, apparently, due to that old Section 44 matter. Do you remember that tripped up so many sitting members of Parliament in our federal Parliament? That is, having either being a dual citizen or having the potential to be a dual citizen and therefore not being able to sit in the Parliament. Now, we're going to speak to Despi O'Connor in just a moment, but we got an email about this from Jared, who's a Rye resident, who's a member of the Voices of Mornington Peninsula, who's got a real problem with what he understands to be Despi O'Connor's continuing campaigning in that seat. Jared, good to talk to you. Good morning.
G'day, Virginia. How are you going?
I'm very well. Now, you're concerned because I think you worry now that with Despi O'Connor continuing to campaign even while there is another independent candidate there, that an important independent vote could be split in that seat. Is that what concerns you?
Oh, exactly. So, as you've been reporting long and loud, it's going to be very difficult for any independent to win. You see Kooyong, you see Goldstein. It's a tough battle, but when you've got two independents, it was always, it was almost going to be impossible. So when Despi team, had their administrative error and the Section 44 thing came into play before Parliament was opened, we thought, okay, so now we can consolidate the independent vote behind one candidate and maybe have a slim chance. But despite being ineligible effectively, I've decided to continue to run. So, and we're just sort of totally perplexed trying to work out why would you do that. So I really didn't understand what Despi's explanation. I'm just absolutely wrapped that we've got two strong female candidates who are both able to deliver the outcomes that we actually want. But right now it looks like we might miss out on both of them or either of them because of the situation.
So look, there's an element of, you would say that, wouldn't you, Jared, in all this, because you are a member of Voices of Mornington Peninsula.
I am. And I'm actively involved in Sarah's campaign too now because she is the endorsed candidate for that group. So, I just want a strong independent for our electorate.
Well, what interested me in the email that you sent me overnight was this, and I'm going to read it out. There's actually very little difference in the policy and priorities of these two independent candidates, and I'd be happy to have either of them as my representative in Parliament. But your frustration is that now the vote's going to split, and you're also accusing Despi O'Connor of, if I can't win, I'll make sure you don't. That seems a little unfair.
Well, that's the only sort of, reading of what I see happening that I could put on it. I'd love to hear her explanation because I just can't fathom it. It's inexplicable to me. I just don't understand the situation.
Okay. Well, I mean, look, I guess that's a fair observation, although anyone is allowed to stand anywhere, even if you end up having 5 independents standing in one seat. That's kind of democracy, Jared.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. This is more like, it's almost like the error made by Despi and the team in the whole Section 44 thing was almost like, okay, that here's, almost like a chance that we can consolidate the vote. My view was that while they were both standing, which they were part of this, neither of them really were going to win, had much of a chance. Because that split vote situation, I really didn't expect either would win because of that situation.
Okay.
And so the circumstances almost delivered that, okay, maybe there is a hope now, but that's now, again, being shut down because of their position.
Jared, thanks for kicking this off. Jared is a Rye resident and a member of Voices of Mornington Peninsula. Thank you. Despi O'Connor is one of those independent candidates for Flinders who's running. Despi, good morning. And let me clarify, I think I've misrepresented your situation. It's not the dual citizenship. It's the fact that you have, as a school teacher, were profiting from the Crown. And it's that particular problem, which I think has been a problem for some candidates before, that's tripped you up. Is that a better way of describing it?
Good morning, Virginia. Yes, that's the section of Section 44, or the part of Section 44 that's, given me a bit of a tough time. I did spend 3 months sorting out citizenship because I, in fact, have grandparents that were born in Greece. And so I had to prove that I wasn't a citizen. So I spent a lot of time and, got a lot of help in that area. And no one, not even my school, realised that this was an issue for me. My school knew I was running from the day before it actually dropped in December, which I actually spoke to you on that morning. So my school has known, and nobody has seen this, which is just heartbreaking that that's the situation that I now find myself in.
I'll go to the advice that you say you've sought and received from barristers and constitutional experts, but are you still running?
Well, my name is on the ballot paper, and if people don't fill in all 10 boxes, then their vote is informal and doesn't count.
So you have to be voted for in order for anyone else to be formally voted for in Flinders.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So we have there are a few issues here, aren't there? And it's not just the issue that I'm facing, which I've been very open and honest about since the time I found out. Within 24 hours, we tried to look at what was going on and determine how we could move forward, and we were very open and honest about where I was at. And just to Jared's point about splitting the vote, the vote doesn't work that way. We have a preferential system, so people can actually choose where their votes go, one right through to 10 in our case in Flinders. The vote isn't split. There are 10 people running in our race down here.
Of course, I guess the point that Jared's trying to make, and maybe it's one that's a bit clubby, if you like, from the point of view of a certain kind of independent. I think he's making, the real world, the realpolitik assessment that there's going to be a certain kind of independent voter in Flinders that if they all, drew together might actually have some impact. But with two largely very similar independent candidates, as I remember, if my memory is right, both initially wanted to be considered as the endorsed voices of candidate. You do end up diluting that vote, though.
Well, I still don't believe that's so because of the preferential system. But Sarah only raised her campaign in the middle of February. She wasn't one of the original people involved at the start. So I guess. That's another issue which I won't go into now because I believe in the independent movement and I also believe in democracy. And, to have, and I think I said this to you way back in December, that, having independent candidates running is actually fantastic. And we're seeing it right across the country, and strength to all of them who have actually stood up.
Well, so we've established that there's nothing you can do about being on the ballot, and the box has to be ticked in order for that ballot to be considered valid. Are you campaigning? Are you formally campaigning?
Well, we're out there because there's nothing to say at this point that we shouldn't be. So the only the only group that can dispute this is the Court of Disputed Returns.
So you believe that you're eligible to run? Have you received advice to say that there's nothing to prevent you from running?
There is nothing that is either way, Virginia. And this is, we've had, and like you said before, we've had parliamentarians sitting in Parliament who had breached Section 44 in the citizenship, and they've sat there until it's been contested, and only then has it actually had a result.
Well, it sounds to me like you're having it both ways. I'm getting people, and I've got to say it's occurred to me too, people contesting your assertion that all those boxes 1 to 10 need to be filled in for the ballot to be considered eligible. I will independently check that with the Electoral Commission. There's a very quick answer we can get on that. But on the other hand...
for the informal vote?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Yes, that's absolutely right. It has to be 1 to 10.
Well, I'm going to double check that anyway because I don't rely on anyone. I go to the experts.
I did actually go and ask the AEC that.
Okay.
And that is, but you can ask.
Of course we will. But, you sort of saying that, hey, it's a fact of life, I'm just there, but I'm going to campaign as well, and then potentially put the seat of Flinders through a Court of Disputed Returns affair.
Well, that's on the count of somebody challenging it.
You mean if you're successful, which it looks unlikely, correct?
Well, we'll let the Flinders people decide that.
How are your preferences running? Who are you giving your first preference to?
I don't have any preferences. I've had an open ticket since December. I've shared that news. People can vote whichever way they like, and that's it.
I've got all these comments coming in, and some ones that are rather critical of you, of not doing your research beforehand, of taking too long to resign as a public school teacher, and of course, there's the profiting from the Crown. And also, this is coming from Tommy Mornington. Phil Cleary got done for the exact same issue. Her team's amateur, says Tom in Mornington. Did you not do your due diligence here, Despi?
Well, I think it's all part of the system, isn't it? Because on the form it says Office of Profit of the Crown. I see myself as a state education teacher, so I didn't think that applied. Obviously, I was incorrect. Mm-hmm. And, this part of the Constitution actually precludes teachers, nurses, emergency service workers and the like from actually standing, and that they have to stand down from their jobs. And can I just tell you, Virginia, there's a clause within the HR section of the State Department for Education that I've now since found out, along with my principal, that we can stand down, we can resign before nomination, and then we can be reinstated with our job at exactly the same entitlements post-election if we lose. If we win, we can stand a term, we can go again, we can stand 2 terms, and we can still be reinstated at exactly the same level that we were beforehand. So isn't that the same? Isn't that still profiting from the Crown?
Don't ask. You're not a constitutional lawyer, neither am I.
No, I'm not. I'm not. And these are the issues, though, that are coming up time and time again. And this is something that I'm prepared to fight. And also, I've also been on leave, Virginia, for 18 months without pay.
Despi, O'Connor, I get your passion as to why you don't want this to be the case, but then there's the reality of what is the case, and I'm not going to waste time arguing that.
And that can only be come through in the Court of Disputed Returns.
All right, well, that's clearly where Despi O'Connor is going. Independent candidate for Flinders. Thanks for joining us today. I've got lots of angry and riled up people here from Peninsula Way, and we have a lot of listeners along the peninsula, so I'm very happy to take your calls, and I'll get to them as soon as I can if you've got time to hang on, and I'll read out some of your texts as well, so do stand by. Let's talk weather. Senior